Welcome back everyone to our massive review of the entire Resident Evil series. This is part 5 out of 6, and today we're diving into some incredible titles. If you've missed the previous parts, don't worry. The link to the full playlist is right down in the description below. Let's get started. Resident Evil: The Mercenaries 3D, release 2011. Meta 65. Release platforms 3DS. Cost unknown. Sell unknown. Playtime. Main story 5 hours, main story plus extras 24 hours. Completionist 108 hours. Resident Evil: The Mercenaries 3D was an exclusive title released for the Nintendo 3DS handheld console, built entirely around the popular The Mercenaries mode featured in Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5. Lacking a dedicated story mode, the game offers a purely arcade-style, action-driven score attack experience. Players select from a roster of iconic Resident Evil characters, such as Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Albert Wesker, and Hunk, each equipped with unique loadouts and abilities to tackle timed stages. The primary objective is to eliminate as many enemies as possible within the strict time limits to achieve the highest score. Executing melee attacks and maintaining kill combos are crucial strategies for extending the timer and maximizing points. The game also incorporated a skill upgrade system and offered two-player cooperative gameplay through both local and online connections, while utilizing the 3DS console's stereoscopic 3D feature. Graphically, Resident Evil: The Mercenaries 3D was considered a commendable technical achievement for the Nintendo 3DS back in 2011. It successfully translated much of the visual style and atmosphere of the series' console installments onto the portable platform. Naturally, however, it wasn't technically comparable to the graphical fidelity of contemporary home console releases, or even more advanced titles later released on the 3DS itself. However, the game faced significant and harsh criticism primarily due to its severe lack of content. It was essentially perceived as an expanded minigame being marketed and sold at the price point of a full retail release. This resulted in the gameplay quickly becoming repetitive for many players, leading to criticism about its low-value proposition. In summary, while the core gameplay loop itself was generally found to be enjoyable, Resident Evil: The Mercenaries 3D as a complete package failed to deliver sufficient content to justify its standing as a standalone full-priced product. Resident Evil: Revelations. Release 2012. Meta 82. Release platforms: Nintendo 3DS, PS3, Xbox 360, Wii U, PC. Cost unknown. Sell unknown. Playtime: main story 8 hours, main plus extras 13 hours, completionist 36 hours. Resident Evil: Revelations was first released in 2012 as an exclusive for the Nintendo 3DS console, and was released for other consoles and personal computers a year later. Following several mainline and spin-off entries in the series that had strayed from the roots of survival horror, this game marked a return to the series' core elements. The story primarily takes place in the closed, claustrophobic, and eerie environment of a seemingly abandoned cruise ship named the Queen Zenobia. Players take on the role of Jill Valentine and her partner, Parker Luciani, who board the mysterious vessel to find Chris Redfield. They quickly find themselves in the midst of a major conspiracy involving a new virus called the T-Abyss and a terrorist organization named Veltro. Similar to older titles in the series, the gameplay focused on exploration, solving environmental puzzles, managing limited ammunition and resources, and combating enemies. One of the key mechanics was the use of a scanner device called the Genesis to find hidden items and analyze enemies and bosses. In addition to its episodic story mode, the title also featured a co-op and arcade-style section called Raid Mode. Critics praised the game for its successful return to the survival horror genre's roots. The captivating and suspenseful atmosphere, especially on the ship, the tense, resource management-based gameplay, and the impressive graphics at the time of its 3DS release were among the game's most prominent strengths. Furthermore, the addictive and popular Raid Mode was met with widespread acclaim. Resident Evil: Operation Raccoon City. Release 2012. Meta 52. Release platforms: PlayStation 3, Xbox, Windows. Cost unknown. Sell 2 million copies. Playtime: main story 6 hours, main plus extras 8 hours, completionist 16 hours. Released in 2012, Resident Evil: Operation Raccoon City is considered one of the weakest titles in the entire Resident Evil series. This squad-based shooter spin-off attempted to narrate the story events of Resident Evil 2 and 3 from the perspective of an Umbrella Special Forces squad. While the idea seemed appealing on paper, its disastrous execution led to a major failure. The gameplay was flawed and broken. The game completely distanced itself from its survival horror roots, becoming a generic third-person action title. The disastrous AI of both teammates and enemies, a flawed cover system, and clunky controls made the experience extremely frustrating. Unlike the main installments, there was no resource management, puzzle solving, or suspenseful atmosphere. Everything was reduced to mindlessly shooting at waves of enemies. In addition to these issues, the game suffered from numerous bugs and technical problems that detracted from the overall experience. Ultimately, with very low scores from critics and a negative reaction from fans, Operation Raccoon City is known as an unsuccessful attempt to change the series' direction and a stain on the history of Resident Evil, a game that failed to achieve any of its goals. Resident Evil 6. Release 2012. Meta 74. Release platforms: PlayStation 3 and 4, Xbox 360 and 1, Windows. Cost unknown. Sell 14.3 million copies. Playtime: main story 21 hours, main plus extras 27 hours, completionist 52 hours. Resident Evil 6, released in 2012, is considered one of the most controversial titles in the entire series. The game completely moved away from the series' survival horror roots, becoming a full-fledged Hollywood-style action game, which sparked varied reactions among fans and critics. This change was not at all well received by critics and hardcore fans of the series, but at the same time, it attracted a very large audience and achieved massive sales. The game's main strength is its vast amount of content and its length. With 4 separate story campaigns featuring popular characters like Leon S. Kennedy, Chris Redfield, and Ada Wong, Resident Evil 6 is considered one of the longest games in the series, taking over 20 hours to complete. Each campaign attempts to offer a different feel, from the struggle for survival in Leon's campaign to the military action in Chris's section. However, the biggest criticism of the game is its fragmented identity and excessive focus on action. Critics believe the game had lost its core identity, turning into a third-person shooter filled with cinematic scenes and non-stop explosions, devoid of the heavy atmosphere and resource management that were staples of the original Resident Evil. Commercially, Resident Evil 6 was a huge success. With over 14.7 million copies sold to date, it is one of the best-selling titles for Capcom and in the Resident Evil series. However, this commercial success was met with a cold reception from critics. The game's Metacritic score on major platforms was around 67 out of 100, which is one of the lowest scores among the main titles in the series, indicating a deep divide between the views of critics and its commercial performance. In summary, Resident Evil 6 is an entertaining and very long action game that can satisfy you if you're looking for a cinematic, action-packed experience. But if you are a longtime fan of the series and expect a terrifying title that is faithful to its roots, this game will likely disappoint you. Resident Evil Revelations 2. Release 2015. Meta 75. Release platforms: PlayStation 3 and 4, Xbox 360 and 1, Windows. Cost unknown. Sell 3.7 million copies. Playtime: main story 10 hours, main plus extras 16 hours, completionist 35 hours. Resident Evil Revelations 2, released episodically in 2015, was a successful attempt by Capcom to bring the series back to its survival horror atmosphere and move away from the pure chaotic action of Resident Evil 6. The game was well received by critics and longtime fans, managing to strike an engaging balance between action, puzzle solving, and a suspenseful atmosphere. The story is split into two parallel timelines and celebrates the return of beloved classic characters, Claire Redfield and Barry Burton. Claire is imprisoned on an island with Moira Burton, Barry's daughter, and 6 months later, Barry arrives on the same island to find his daughter, accompanied by a mysterious little girl named Natalia. The episodic narrative, filled with cliffhangers, effectively built suspense and curiosity in the player. One of the main gameplay innovations was the asymmetrical co-op mechanic. In each section, there was a combat-focused character, Claire and Barry, and a support character, Moira with a flashlight and Natalia with sensory abilities. This system forced the player to constantly switch between the two characters to progress and survive, which added more depth to the gameplay. However, the game was not without its flaws. The use of repetitive environments in Barry's storyline, as he often follows Claire's path, and the technical graphics, which were not on par with mainline titles due to a lower budget, were among the criticisms leveled against it. The great strength of Revelations 2 is its addictive and expansive raid mode. This arcade-style mode, with its abundance of missions, playable characters, weapons, and an RPG-based upgrade system, gave the game tremendous replay value and offered hours of entertaining content. Overall, Resident Evil Revelations 2 is a worthy and well-crafted spin-off title that, with its focus on classic survival horror elements, creative cooperative gameplay, and a compelling story, delivers an enjoyable experience for both old fans and newcomers alike.